I'm Jordan. I'm 33 years old, divorced, and a single dad of two absolutely chaotic, hilarious, and painfully honest kids, Emma, 7, and Lucas, 5. I'm not perfect. I don't live in a big house. I don't have a high-status job. I don't wear tailored suits or own a Rolex. But what I do have is a whole lot of love for my kids, a mortgage I never miss, and a spine that's gotten pretty good at holding me up, even when the people who should have had my back were the ones pushing me down. My story starts, predictably, around the holidays. You know, that time of year when everyone's pretending their family isn't weird and dysfunctional. When social media is full of perfect matching pajama photos and cookie baking reels while behind the scenes, someone's mom is crying in the bathroom, and at least one uncle is drunk by noon. Yeah, that time. I grew up in a picture-perfect neighborhood with a picture-perfect family. Or that's how it looked from the outside. My dad ran his own real estate agency and was obsessed with appearances. My mom was, well, let's just say she specialized in emotional gymnastics, flipping between doting and disappointed depending on who was watching. And then there's my younger brother, Chase. Golden boy, Mr. Everything. Ivy League. Tall, handsome, charming. You know the type. If he were any more polished, he'd squeak when he walked. Growing up, Chase could do no wrong. He wrecked my dad's car at 17. Boys will be boys. I missed curfew once to help a friend having a panic attack. Irresponsible and untrustworthy. Chase got straight B's. Solid effort. I got 1 B+. What happened here, Jordan? By the time we were adults, the hierarchy was pretty well established. I was the you tried your best, honey disappointment, the one with the messy divorce and the difficult kids. Chase was the investment banker with the sculpted girlfriend of the month, the one who got a standing ovation just for existing. He could walk into the house late, say nothing, and somehow still dominate the conversation. But I tried to let it go. I really did. I swallowed the little digs. The fake concern. The way my mom would talk over me anytime I tried to share something good, like when Lucas got into a great preschool or when I landed a big client. That's nice, sweetie, she'd say, and then immediately pivot to Chase's latest vacation to Turks and Caicos or his new designer watch. Still, I kept showing up. For birthdays. For Thanksgiving. For the occasional awkward dinner when I could wrangle the kids into decent clothes and force a smile through the snide remarks. I did it because I still hoped, I guess, that maybe one day they'd stop seeing me as the screw-up who got divorced at 28 and started seeing me as a man who fought for custody, who went to every parent-teacher conference, who taught his daughter how to ride a bike and his son how to tie his shoes. Then came this year's Christmas invitation, or rather, the lack of one. It started as a text from my mom. Not a call, not even a voice memo. A plain, 4-line text message that hit like a slap. Hey Jordan, after a lot of thought, we've decided to keep Christmas small this year. Chase's new girlfriend will be joining us, and we really want to make a good impression. We'll do something with you and the kids after the holidays instead. Hope you understand. I stared at the screen for a solid minute, rereading it as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less insulting. Hope you understand. Understand what, exactly? That my kids, their grandchildren, weren't worthy of being around for the family Christmas because Chase's new arm candy might find them too much? That I, their firstborn son, the one who spent the last decade rebuilding his life from the ground up, didn't make the cut? I called my mom immediately. She didn't pick up. So I tried Dad. He answered, but the conversation was brief. She's just trying to avoid any scenes, Jordan, he said. You know how high-strung Chase can get when things don't go smoothly. And this girl is important, apparently. Oh, I see, I said. So to keep his mood intact, you'll just erase me and your grandkids from Christmas? Sounds smooth to me. There was a pause. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Right. Because I was the problem. I didn't tell the kids. Not yet. Emma had already made little paper snowflakes for Grandma's tree, and Lucas had picked out a tie for Grandpa from the dollar store. I couldn't break their hearts just yet. So instead, I told them we might do Christmas a little differently this year. A surprise adventure, I said, while trying to ignore the heavy pit in my stomach. But here's the thing. The more I thought about it, the less okay I was with staying silent. My parents didn't just exclude me. They humiliated me. They made a choice to pretend we didn't exist, to hide us, like some inconvenient stain on the furniture. And all for the sake of Chase's new fling? Yeah, no, I wasn't going to just roll over for that. That's when I made a decision. A reckless, emotional, possibly petty decision, but one I don't regret for a second. I was going to show up anyway. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't tell anyone. Not the kids. Not even my best friend, who usually talks me down when I get these flashes of defiance. I just woke up on Christmas morning, dressed Emma and Lucas in their nicest outfits, loaded a few wrapped presents into the trunk, and drove to my parents' house like nothing was wrong. The snow had just started falling when we pulled into the driveway. The lights were twinkling on the roof. There were extra cars in the drive, one of them a sleek black Mercedes I didn't recognize. Emma clutched her little gift bag with both hands as we walked up the steps. Lucas was humming Jingle Bells under his breath. For a second, I hesitated. I almost turned around. But then the door opened. And that's where everything changed. Because the woman standing just inside the foyer, the woman in the crimson dress with the wine glass in hand and the perfectly curled hair, froze when she saw me. Her mouth parted. Her eyes widened. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "You never told me your brother was my ex," she whispered. And then she ran. Straight past my stunned parents. Past my gaping brother. Straight into my arms. I'll never forget the look on Chase's face. She hugged me like she'd been waiting a long time to do it. Not just a polite, nice to see you again kind of hug. I mean, she clung to me, her arms tight around my back, her cheek pressed to my shoulder like she was grounding herself. The kind of hug that says, finally, safety. And it knocked the wind out of me, because I knew that kind of hug. I'd given it to my kids more times than I could count. Behind her, Chase sputtered. What are you doing?" She pulled back slowly, blinking like she was trying to snap out of a trance. "You never told me your brother was Jordan." My mom's eyes were wide as saucers, her hand half raised like she couldn't decide whether to clutch her pearls or shut the door in my face. My dad had frozen mid-step with a plate of shrimp cocktail in his hand, and even Lucas and Emma were standing quietly, sensing something very not normal was unfolding. Chase's face morphed into this strange cocktail of disbelief, rage, and confusion. "Wait, what do you mean, Jordan? You know him?" "Oh, we more than know each other," she said softly, and then looked at me with a small, sad smile. "Jordan and I dated for almost a year. Back in college. You never told me his last name, Chase. How did you not tell me your brother was Jordan Monroe?" There was a long beat of silence. You could have heard a gingerbread cookie crumble. And then Chase exploded. "Are you freaking kidding me?" he barked, slamming his wine glass on the nearest table so hard it splashed red drops across the tablecloth. "This is some twisted joke, right? You're messing with me." "Chase, stop," my mom started, but he wasn't listening. "Why are you even here, Jordan?" he snapped, storming toward me. "Didn't we specifically ask you not to come?" That was it. The moment I felt something inside me snap. All the little digs. All the passive-aggressive, maybe next time invites. All the years of being told I was too much or not enough. All the times I'd let it go, kept the peace, took the high road. I stepped forward and looked him dead in the eye. "You didn't ask me. You uninvited me. You made it clear that I was an embarrassment. That my kids weren't good enough to be here." My mom's voice rose, panicked. "Jordan, let's not do this in front of the children." "You already did it in front of the children," I said, without turning to look at her. "When you told them Santa couldn't visit Grandpa's house this year. When you sent that text like I was some distant cousin who'd lost his +1 privileges. You made that call." Lucas tugged gently on my sleeve. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" My chest tightened, but I shook my head. "No, buddy, you're not in trouble. None of this is your fault." Chase scoffed, raking a hand through his hair. "This is unbelievable. You're seriously going to ruin Christmas just because we wanted to make a good impression." "I didn't ruin anything," I said. "You did that the moment you decided that appearances were more important than your own family." Then I turned to her, the woman at the center of this accidental firestorm. "I had no idea you were dating my brother," I said gently. "None." She gave me a long, almost embarrassed look. Neither did I, apparently. My mom looked like she was about to faint. "Can we please take this conversation into the other room? The neighbors." "Oh, screw the neighbors," Chase snapped. "You know what? No. Let's talk about this right here, since Jordan wants to make a scene. Let's just get it all out." He turned to her. Her name was Marissa, by the way, but somehow no one had bothered to introduce her officially before things blew up. "You dated him? Seriously?" "For a year. I was 19, she said quietly. "It wasn't a fling. We were real. Until I transferred schools. We lost touch. But yeah, Jordan and I were serious." You never even told me you had an older brother. You just said your family was small and close. You barely mentioned them at all. Chase's face twisted. Because he's not a part of it. He's a footnote. That was the last straw for Emma. She'd been clutching her little glittery gift bag this whole time, her eyes darting between the adults like a tennis match. But when she heard that footnote, she stepped forward, chin quivering. We're not footnotes, she said, her voice small but clear. We're family. And then she dropped the bag on the floor, the little present for my mom. A candle she made herself, rolling out onto the hardwood with a soft clunk. Silence. Dead, horrible silence. My mom bent down and picked up the candle like it was a used napkin, holding it between two fingers. She gave it a quick glance, then offered a tight smile to Emma. Thank you, sweetheart, she said, in the same tone she uses to tell the mailman that he left the wrong package. Very creative. Emma looked at me, then back at her grandmother, then down at her shiny shoes. Her shoulders slumped. That's when Marissa stepped in. You know what? She said, suddenly louder. No. This is insane. You treat him like garbage. And for what? Because he's not as shiny as Chase? Because he actually shows up for his kids? Jordan's the best man I ever dated. And if I'd known you were his family, I never would have walked through that door. Chase turned purple. Don't say that. I mean it, she snapped. You've been a complete narcissist since we met. I thought it was just stress. Or a phase. But now I see it's learned behavior. You treated your brother like he doesn't matter, and your parents let you. Marissa looked at my mom, then my dad. You don't get to look surprised. You built this. And then she turned to me. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I believe you, I said quietly. Chase finally lost it. You think you're better than me? He shouted. You think showing up with your loser kids and your tragic divorce story makes you some kind of hero? That word hit me like a slap. Loser kids. Before I could respond, Lucas let out a little hiccup sob. That was all it took. Emma grabbed his hand, and the two of them bolted for the door. I turned on instinct, following them outside. It was snowing harder now. The car was already dusted white. Emma was trying to be strong, but I could see it. The way her lips trembled, the way she blinked too hard. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to ruin Christmas. That nearly broke me. You didn't ruin anything, I said, kneeling beside her. I'm the one who brought us here. I thought maybe things would be different this time. Behind us, the front door slammed. Heavy footsteps followed. I turned, expecting to see Chase, but it was Marissa. She was shaking. I dumped him, she said, like it had just happened in her mind as well as in reality. I told him it's over, that I want nothing to do with any of this. I blinked. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, she said firmly. You were right. Family isn't about appearances. It's about showing up. And I don't want to waste another second pretending this family is normal. She looked down at Emma and Lucas and smiled through tears. You two are amazing. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. I nodded, swallowing back a knot of emotions. Then the door opened again. It was Chase this time. But he wasn't alone. My dad stepped out after him, expression unreadable. He took a deep breath, looked at me, then at the kids, then back at Chase. And then he said something I wasn't expecting at all. Maybe it's time we had a real conversation. And that's where everything shifted. The dynamics, the power, the illusion of unity shattered, and the fractures had never been more visible. But what came next? What my mom said, what Chase did. That's when it all really went off the rails. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't have anything to say, trust me, I did, but because I was trying to figure out who my dad was really talking to. His words, maybe it's time we had a real conversation, just hung there in the snow-chilled air, suspended like the breath fog between us. But his eyes weren't on me. They were on Chase. Chase, who looked like someone had just knocked the wind out of him. What? He asked, squinting like he'd misheard. My dad didn't flinch. You heard me. And just like that, the family hierarchy, the carefully curated house of cards my parents had spent decades balancing, shifted. Not collapsed, not yet. But something tilted. Something undeniable. Inside, the door creaked open again, and this time my mom's voice cut through the air like an icicle snapping. Alan, what are you doing? She hissed. We agreed. No, my dad said, still not looking away from Chase. You agreed. I went along with it because I was tired, and honestly, because it was easier than fighting with you. But this, he gestured toward us, to the kids shivering beside me. to Marissa still trembling behind me. This is too far. Now Chase looked panicked. Wait, Dad, come on. Don't make this into some guilt trip. I didn't know she dated Jordan. That's not my fault. It's not about Marissa, Dad said calmly. It's about the way you've treated your brother for years. The way we've treated him. That last part. We landed like a cold stone in my chest. I'd spent so long believing I was alone in that realization. That maybe I was exaggerating or being overly sensitive, or that somehow I'd earned the scraps of love they threw my way. But hearing my dad admit it, even just a sliver of it, it stirred something in me. Not joy, not forgiveness, just confirmation. I wasn't crazy. My mom stepped fully outside now, her robe fluttering in the wind. Alan, this isn't the time or place. Maybe it's exactly the time, he said. Maybe if we'd had this conversation years ago, Jordan wouldn't have to keep proving he deserves to be in his own family. That did it. Chase threw his hands up. Okay, wow. So now I'm the villain? I get ambushed by my ex-girlfriend and my ex-brother, and I'm the bad guy. I finally spoke, my voice low but steady. You were never ambushed, Chase. You just got caught. And with that, I turned to my kids, unlocking the car with a soft beep. Get in, guys. Let's go home. Emma hesitated, her eyes darting between the adults, but then she nodded and helped Lucas into the back seat. Marissa hovered uncertainly. I'll be okay, I told her. Really? She gave me one last look, part apology, part admiration, and stepped back inside. I slid into the driver's seat, hands shaking just slightly on the wheel. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. But the silence in the car was loud. Too loud. I didn't put on music. I didn't try to distract them with games or promises. We just drove. About halfway home, Lucas spoke up. Daddy, yeah, buddy. Do we still get Christmas? I blinked hard, then laughed, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I'd cry. Yeah, I said. Yeah, we do. It just might look a little different this year. And that's how we ended up at a 24-hour diner in the middle of town on Christmas night. Vinyl booths, twinkling lights strung haphazardly across the windows, and a waitress named Diane who gave my kids extra whipped cream on their pancakes without being asked. We sat in that booth for over an hour, sipping hot chocolate and telling stories. Emma made up a game called Guess What Santa Forgot, where we each had to come up with the weirdest present Santa might accidentally leave behind. Lucas won with a whole giraffe that sneezes glitter. For the first time that day, they laughed, real, belly-deep giggles that melted something in me. That night, I tucked them into bed in our cramped little apartment, surrounded by the glow of mismatched fairy lights and the scent of the pine-scented candle Emma had made. It wasn't grand. It wasn't Pinterest perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I realized maybe that was enough. The weeks that followed weren't easy. After Christmas, the silence from my family was deafening. No apology, no check-in, not even a half-hearted Happy New Year text. My mom had gone full ghost, and Chase? I figured he was too busy licking his wounds and blaming everyone but himself. I won't lie, it hurt. More than I expected. I'd hoped that Christmas night might have been a turning point, that maybe my dad would follow up on that real conversation. But nothing came. I hit a low point around mid-January. The post-holiday blues. The weight of everything. The awkward stares from mutual acquaintances who'd heard something about the Christmas meltdown. I started wondering if I'd done the wrong thing by showing up. Then one day, as I was picking up the kids from school, Emma ran to me with a drawing clenched in her little fists. She thrust it at me proudly. It was a picture of the three of us in the diner booth, all smiling with syrupy pancakes in front of us. At the top, in big, blocky letters, she'd written, "My favorite Christmas ever." That hit harder than any lecture or apology ever could. That night, after they fell asleep, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to let them grow up chasing approval from people who only gave love with conditions. I wasn't going to be that person. Not for them. Not for me. So I started changing things. Slowly. Quietly. At first, it was small stuff. I started waking up an hour earlier, making better breakfasts, taking time to actually sit and eat with them instead of rushing through the mornings. I made bedtime stories a ritual, voices, sound effects, even costumes when I could swing it. Then I updated my resume. I'd been freelancing as a graphic designer for years, scraping by with small gigs. But I knew I had more to offer. So I built a portfolio website. I reached out to old clients. I joined a couple of online design forums and started sharing my work. To my surprise, people noticed. In March, I landed a long-term remote contract with a small but growing startup. It paid better than anything I'd done before, came with flexible hours, and more importantly, respect. With the extra income, I started saving. Not just scraping by, actually saving. I paid off a credit card. Enrolled Emma in an art class she'd been begging to try. Bought Lucas the telescope he'd been eyeing for months. And one rainy Thursday in April, as I watched them both sprawled on the living room floor, one sketching dragons, the other pretending to find Jupiter, I realized something. We were happy. Not rich. Not fancy. But real, honest-to-God happy. And somehow, without fanfare or applause, I had rebuilt us. I still hadn't heard from my parents. Until May. It started with a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole and nearly dropped my coffee mug. It was my dad, standing in the hallway with his hands clasped, looking older than I remembered. When I opened the door, he gave me a nod. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He walked in slowly, glancing around the apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. "It's nice," he said. "It's ours," I replied. He nodded, sat on the edge of the couch. "I've been meaning to reach out. I just didn't know how." I crossed my arms. "You could have started with 'I'm sorry.'" He looked up, met my eyes. "I am." And just like that, everything inside me clenched. He continued, "I should have spoken up sooner. At Christmas. Years before that. Your mother and I, we got so wrapped up in making Chase feel like a success, we forgot we already had a son who was living it." I said nothing. Just let him talk. "You're a good man, Jordan. A better father than I ever was. And I'm proud of you. I wish I'd said it sooner." It took everything in me not to cry. Instead, I just nodded. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. He stood to leave. "I won't ask you to forgive your mother. I know she's difficult, but I hope one day you'll forgive me." Then he turned to go, and as the door clicked shut behind him, I sat down on the couch, heart thudding. Not because of what he said, but because of what it meant. The cracks were finally showing. But the collapse? That came later. The real betrayal was still waiting, and when it came, it didn't just shatter trust. It turned everything upside down. Something changed after my dad's visit. Not outwardly. My mom still hadn't called. Chase hadn't texted. There was no grand family reconciliation or sudden group hug. But there was a shift, a subtle tilt in the universe, like the air before a thunderstorm. The kind where you don't hear the thunder yet, but you know it's coming. I didn't forgive my dad overnight, but I believed him. And maybe that belief cracked something open in me, because for the first time in years, I stopped hoping things would go back to normal. I didn't want normal. Normal was what led to being cut out of Christmas. Normal was pretending I wasn't being disrespected. Normal was Chase walking through life like the golden sun while I picked up the splinters he left behind. No, I was done waiting for them to see my worth. And I sure as hell wasn't going to raise my kids to chase love like it was a prize they had to earn. But revenge? That was something else entirely. Not the kind with torches and pitchforks. Not screaming matches or burning bridges. I wasn't interested in giving them more drama to twist into a Jordan's being difficult again narrative. No, if I was going to do this, it would be clean, strategic, quiet. I'd learned a long time ago that the best revenge wasn't loud. It was undeniable. And the first spark came from Marissa. It had been months since the Christmas fiasco. I hadn't heard from her since she walked back into that house after dumping Chase. I assumed she'd moved on, started fresh. Maybe even blocked every Monroe in her contacts. So imagine my surprise when she emailed me in early June. Subject line, "I owe you an apology. And maybe an opportunity." I opened it cautiously, half expecting drama, but instead I found something much more interesting. She'd moved across town shortly after Christmas. Said she needed a reset. Turns out, that night had snapped something in her too. The lies, the manipulation, the casual cruelty. It wasn't just a one-off. It was a symptom of something bigger she'd been ignoring. "I was so caught up in the idea of Chase being this perfect guy," she wrote. "He said all the right things. But when I saw how your family treated you, and how you treated your kids in the middle of all that, it made me realize I'd been with a man who looked good on paper, but couldn't carry basic human decency in practice." She'd started working with a nonprofit that provided small business grants for single parents and marginalized entrepreneurs. And guess who she thought of when they launched a new initiative for digital creators? "I remember you saying you were doing graphic design," she wrote. This program is offering mentorship, funding, and a community for creatives building their own business. If you're interested, I'll fast-track your application. At the bottom of the email was a link. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't want it. I did, but because I knew what it represented. A door opening. A door that didn't lead back to them. A door that led away. I clicked it. The application wasn't long, but it made me think about things I hadn't put into words before. My goals. My mission. Who I wanted to serve. Why I started designing in the first place. To create things that made people feel seen. Not polished. Not corporate. Just real. I submitted the form and didn't expect to hear back for a few weeks. I heard back in 2 days. I'd been accepted, with a $10,000 business grant, 6 months of mentorship, and a feature spot at their annual showcase in September. When I read the email, I didn't scream or punch the air. I just sat there in the living room, the kids asleep in their beds, and let the warmth wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I had momentum, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next few weeks were a blur. I started building a brand, not just a portfolio, but a voice. My mentor helped me define my niche. Custom branding for indie creators, small businesses, and nonprofits that didn't want the cookie-cutter corporate vibe. And the work poured in. Word spread. Clients referred friends. I set boundaries. I raised my rates. I hired a part-time assistant to help with admin. I bought better equipment. I redesigned my website. I even got featured in a design blog for my work with a local bakery that wanted to rebrand after the pandemic. By the end of July, I wasn't just making rent, I was saving. And through it all, I kept quiet. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't send them links. Didn't brag or gloat. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they found out. Because Chase, he hated being upstaged. Especially by me. And sure enough, the first crack came in the form of a phone call. It was my mom. Which alone was enough to make me pause. I answered cautiously. Hello. She didn't waste time on small talk. I heard you've been working with Marissa again, she said. Not how are you? Not congratulations. Just that clipped, frosty tone she always used when she felt out of control. Working with her? No. She helped me get a grant. That's it. She made a humming sound. Interesting. Because Chase said she's been talking about you. Quite a bit, apparently. I raised an eyebrow, even though she couldn't see it. Did Chase also mention that he's the reason she left in the first place? She ignored that. Look, Jordan, I just want to make sure you're not planning to cause problems. With the showcase coming up and your sudden success, I know how easy it is for things to go to your head. I almost laughed. My success isn't sudden, Mom. It's just that none of you were paying attention before. There was a pause. Then she softened, or tried to. We're proud of you. You know that. No, I said calmly. You're concerned about how I might use it. That's not the same thing. She bristled. Well, I just hope you'll remember who supported you when it really mattered. I didn't respond. Because the truth was, they hadn't. They only showed up when they thought I had something to offer. And that realization clarified everything. The showcase was in early September. A big event. Open to the public. Attended by local press, small business owners, and potential investors. Each recipient got a booth to show off their work, tell their story, and connect with others. I poured my soul into that booth. Not flashy, but intentional. Thoughtful. Every color, every layout, every example piece was a love letter to the people I'd worked with. I even printed a giant canvas of Emma's favorite Christmas ever drawing and mounted it in the back corner of my display. Visitors loved it. Asked about the story. I told them honestly. And then, just as I was talking with a bakery owner about a potential rebrand, I saw them. My parents. Walking through the event like they belonged there. Chase in tow. My dad looked slightly sheepish. My mom looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. Chase. Chase looked like he was doing math in his head, trying to figure out how this had happened without him knowing. They didn't come to support me. They came to assess. To see what I'd become. To measure whether it was worth crawling back into my life. I didn't wave. I didn't call them over. But they came anyway. Wow. Chase said, eyeing my booth like he was sizing up a competitor. This is a lot. I like it, my dad said quickly. Very warm. My mom nodded. Good use of color. Very family-oriented. I gave a tight smile. Thanks. They lingered, trying to make conversation. I kept it polite, distant. Every sentence calculated. Then, just as they were about to leave, my mom turned. Oh, by the way, she said, as if it had just occurred to her. We're hosting Thanksgiving this year. Thought we'd extend the invitation early. I blinked. Really? She smiled. We want to start fresh. New chapter and all. Chase added, yeah? No hard feelings, right? I looked at all three of them, and I realized something crucial. They weren't offering reconciliation. They were offering optics. Now that I was worth something, successful, visible, respected, I was useful again. A prop to hold up at dinner. Proof that they were a supportive family all along. But they didn't want me. They wanted the idea of me. The successful son. The entrepreneur. The redemption arc. And that's when the idea began to form. Slowly. Methodically. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. I didn't want their acceptance anymore. But I did want something else. Control. And if Thanksgiving was their next play, then I already had my opening move. Because this time, I would be the one writing the story. And I wasn't finished setting the stage. Not yet. It's funny how people assume revenge is about rage. About loud confrontations, public breakdowns, messy explosions. But that's not what real revenge looks like. Real revenge is subtle, calculated. The kind of thing that's already over by the time they realize it's begun. So when my parents extended that Thanksgiving invite, all smiles and false olive branches, I smiled back. Sure, I said. That sounds nice. And they lit up. My mom immediately launched into a monologue about seating charts and catering, while Chase smirked like he'd just won something. They had no idea what I was planning, but it had already started. The first step was easy. I said yes. I told them I'd bring the kids, bring dessert, even come a little early to help set up. My mom practically melted with relief. My dad thanked me, voice low and almost sincere. Chase was quieter, but I caught the side-eye glances he gave me during the showcase, like he was still trying to figure out how I'd ended up outshining him in a world he didn't even belong to. He didn't realize it wasn't about outshining anyone. I was just doing my own thing. But if he wanted to turn it into a competition, fine. I'd play. Step 2. I let the silence do the work. I didn't text them in the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving. Didn't offer updates or ask what to bring. I let them stew in uncertainty. Let them wonder if I'd really show or ghost them like they ghosted me last Christmas. But I did prepare. I spent the month doubling down on my business. I wrapped up 3 major projects. Booked 2 more. Finished the final design for the nonprofit that gave me the grant, and they loved it so much. They offered me a speaking slot at their winter conference. I also set up a small scholarship fund with a portion of my earnings to help young designers from low-income homes. I didn't announce any of this. I just did it. Because the best kind of revenge isn't revenge. It's success that doesn't need them anymore. Thanksgiving Day. I dressed the kids in matching fall outfits Emma picked out herself. I wore a simple navy sweater and jeans. Nothing flashy. Just clean, calm, present. Before we left, I made a quick stop. A small stack of envelopes. Labeled and sealed. 1 for Chase. 1 for Mom. 1 for Dad. I tucked them in my bag, heart steady. We arrived at noon. The house was immaculate, as usual. Fake pumpkins on the steps. A decorative chalkboard that read, thankful, blessed, family obsessed, in my mother's neat cursive. Emma rolled her eyes at it and whispered, "That's a lie," which made me almost burst out laughing. They greeted us at the door like nothing had ever happened. My mom swept the kids into a hug. My dad clapped me on the back like we were old friends. Chase. Chase offered a nod and a tight-lipped smile. I handed off the pie I'd brought, made by Emma and Lucas the night before, and said, "Give it 10 seconds before you pretend it's too sweet." My mom let out a tight laugh, missing the point. We settled in. The kids ran off to explore. Chase's latest date, some tall, willowy blonde named Erica, made polite small talk, but didn't seem all that engaged. Then came dinner. And the speech. My dad stood at the head of the table, carving knife in hand, and raised his glass. "This year," he began, "I want to give thanks to something unexpected." He looked at me. To reconciliation. To growth. To second chances. Everyone clapped. Everyone except me. I just smiled. And when the applause died down, I reached into my bag and pulled out the 3 envelopes. "I brought something too," I said. "Since we're doing gratitude." I passed them out, Mom, Dad, Chase, and leaned back in my chair. They hesitated, then opened them. And read. My dad's eyes widened first. My mom's face went pale. Chase. He went red. Because inside each envelope was a single sheet of paper. Not hostile. Not cruel. Just facts. Mom's envelope. A full summary of every tax deduction I'd tracked over the last year, including childcare, freelance expenses, and a recent charitable donation in her name to a shelter for domestic violence survivors. The same shelter she'd mocked once when I volunteered there, calling it a place for people who made bad decisions. At the bottom, a note. You always said I'd never amount to much. I figured it was only fair to prove you wrong and let you claim the credit for once. Dad's envelope. A copy of the keynote speech I'd been invited to give at the winter conference. Topic: Redefining Success. The power of building without a safety net. Underneath that, a signed thank you letter from the nonprofit director for the scholarship I'd created in my dad's name. A scholarship for resilient individuals from unsupportive families who choose growth anyway. At the bottom, thanks for the silence. It taught me how to speak for myself. Chase's envelope. This one took longer. Inside, he found a breakdown of a business pitch he'd quietly submitted to the same nonprofit months earlier. A real estate tech idea he thought would impress the board. He had no idea I knew about it. But Marissa had quietly shared it with the committee after he'd ghosted her and tried to name-drop my success. The letter included their formal rejection and a brief note explaining why. We don't partner with people who use others as leverage, nor with those who treat family as disposable. Your brother earned this opportunity. You didn't. I watched him read it twice. Then a third time. His jaw clenched. You sabotaged me. I shook my head. No, I just stopped cleaning up after you. My mom looked like she was about to explode. How dare you turn this into some spectacle? This was supposed to be a reunion. No, I said calmly. This was supposed to be another photo op. One where you could trot me out and say, look how far Jordan's come, like you had anything to do with it. I stood, slow and steady. The kids watched from the doorway, silent. You didn't want me here last year because you were afraid I'd embarrass you, I said. This year, you invited me because now I make you look better. You never wanted me. You wanted a version of me that made you look good. I turned to Chase. You used to look down on me. I let you. You treated me like a footnote in my own family. And I let you. Then I looked at all of them. But I'm not here to be forgiven. I'm not here to be accepted. I'm here to make something clear. I don't need any of you. My mom stood, tears in her eyes, but they weren't regretful tears. They were the kind people cry when their mask slips. You ungrateful little. I'm not ungrateful, I said. I'm done. And then I turned to my kids. You ready to go? They nodded. We walked out as the table erupted behind us. Voices rising, plates clattering. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The fallout came fast. Chase tried to smear me on social media, said I'd lied, manipulated people, turned our family against each other. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. People knew me now. Clients, peers, the community I'd built. And when someone posted screenshots of his nonprofit rejection letter, anonymously, but clearly legitimate, his credibility took a hit he couldn't spin. My mom tried to call a week later. I didn't answer. She left a message. Something about misunderstanding, about things getting out of hand. I deleted it. My dad sent a letter, handwritten, surprisingly thoughtful. He said he didn't agree with how I'd done it, but he understood. That he hoped one day we'd find a way back. I haven't replied yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But here's what I do know. My kids are happy. Safe. Loved. My business is thriving. My life is mine. And for the first time in decades, I feel like I finally stepped out of the shadow of people who needed me to stay small. This wasn't revenge. This was release. And as we drove home from that Thanksgiving dinner, windows down, music playing, Emma singing off-key, and Lucas trying to beatbox, I realized I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. They told me I might embarrass them. Turns out, the only shame they felt was watching me walk away without needing them at all.